As the Money Burns is an original podcast by Nikki Woodard. Based on historical research, this is a deep exploration into what happened to a set of actual heirs and heiresses to some of America's most famous fortunes when the Great Depression hits. Each episode has 3 primary sections. Section 1 is a narrative story. Section 2 goes deeper into the historical facts. Section 3 focuses on contemporary, emotional, and personal connections. Story recap. When the missing Lindbergh baby is found dead, Charles Lindbergh and Evalyn Walsh McLean realize all their recovery efforts were only hoaxes. Now back to As the Money Burns. An American Versailles. The times are getting tougher, and one of the largest mansions closes to prevent a potential Versailles ending. Section 1, Story. May to June 1932, Chestnut Hill outside Philadelphia. Inside the 3rd largest home built in America, changes are happening. Hallways and rooms once covered in art are stripped bare. Are more coming or going? Tapestries removed for cleaning, artwork placed in wooden crates, furniture covered and wrapped. Are they moving? Will there be more extravagant shopping excursions to update and once again regale with the luxuries only the wealthiest can buy? Maybe another magnificent mansion is to be built as its replacement. News coverage will soon follow. How can it not? Philadelphia's biggest taxpayer and his family always get plenty of press. Financier Edward E.T. Stotesbury has made more than a few million. Yes, he got hit by the 1929 Wall Street crash, but his ongoing lifestyle doesn't seem to be hurt by it. And here is his monument to his wealth, Whitemarsh Hall, built from 1916 to 1921, spending $3 million in construction. That would be $54.8 million in 2023. A celebration of his second marriage to Eva Roberts Cromwell Stotesbury, who's more than willing to play happy hostess. Every inch of Whitemarsh Hall is opulence at its finest, luxuries collected from around the world, every detail thought out and done and redone to the max. A home where endless parties are thrown to the hilt, even during Prohibition. The Christian Temperance Union complained about all the booze, smoke, and extravagance emanating from the lavish and politically insensitive parties hosted by Eva, who will do everything to boost her husband and her family's status as the potential reigning society queen of Philadelphia. She has better luck dominating Palm Beach and Bar Harbor. Her close companion and occasional fellow co-conspirator, the equally opulent Evalyn Walsh McLean, the flamboyant owner of the Hope Diamond. The 2 ladies are currently scheming to have Eva's son, James Jimmy H.R. Cromwell, marry the richest girl, Doris Duke. Doris could use Eva's guidance, who was very influential in helping Jimmy's first wife's family, the Otto dynasty Dodges, finally enjoy their wealth and gain traction in society. Socially ambitious Nanaline Duke couldn't hope for a better opportunity to rid herself of daughter Doris while elevating their status. The Stotesburys have long reigned in the headlines, their every move documented and noted. And yeah, 1932 has another flurry. First, Eva made a small ripple when she openly supported Mrs. Grace Fortescue during her arrest for murder leading to the Massie Trial in Hawaii. After several reports questioning E.T.'s residential status qualifying for voting, earlier this winter, E.T. Stotesbury resigns from his longtime 18-year participation in the Sinking Fund Commission in Philadelphia. Lighter reports E.T.'s granddaughter Frances Hutchinson stays with her grandparents in Palm Beach. Then Eva's granddaughter and recent debutante Louise Brooks now successfully marries within less than a year of her 1931 debut. Now by summer, focus returns to Whitemarsh Hall, the home first built in 1917 to quickly be remodeled and expanded to its full opulence by 1921. Stotesbury spares no expense when building his home with his new, much younger second wife, Eva. 2 of her 3 children will have their own rooms, though they are adults by the time the mansion is finished. When Eva's son, James Jimmy H.R. Cromwell, serves as a naval officer during World War I in Paris, he tells his young lover, coloratura soprano, opera singer, Cobina Wright, all about how magnificent his home is back in Pennsylvania. He brags about the buttons in every room that will summon servants, an ice cream parlor, soda fountain, and even a bowling alley on the premises. Often referred as Italian Renaissance, the actual Neo-Georgian style Whitemarsh Hall is designed by architect Horace Trumbauer, who would also design the Duke Fifth Avenue mansion in Manhattan. British art dealer and baron Lord Duveen assists in collecting many of the fine works of art. Whitemarsh Hall is nicknamed the American Versailles due to its ornate gardens and the main building. The palatial home itself expands 2.5 acres. It is 6 stories tall with 3 floors underground. It has 151 rooms, 45 bathrooms, 12 elevators, a 64-foot ballroom, indoor gym, swimming pool, squash and tennis courts, a barbershop, a movie theater, bakery, and tailor. It has its own switchboard with an operator, hence the button summoning servants. Among several lesser houses and utility buildings, an on-site refrigeration plant could produce a ton of ice a day. The estate employs hundreds of servants. 70 gardeners tend to the 300 surrounding acres, while 45 live-in servants help maintain the premises and all its functions and often travel with the couple to other residencies and even international destinations. Eva Stotesbury herself has 3 secretaries, travels with her own fashion designer, and once spent $500,000 for a hunting expedition to collect alligator skins to create her own extensive set of luggage. No 2023 estimate provided, as not sure which year. Eva refers to her second marriage to Stotesbury as the best and most profitable financial transaction I ever completed. Upon their 1912 marriage, then 63-year-old widowed E.T. is equally exceedingly happy with his beautiful, 20 years his junior wife, Eva, and welcomes her teenage children as well. E.T. would then go on to build and spread his wealth generously around. He spoils her with jewels, and Eva affectionately calls him Kickapoo. 20 years later, and now in his 80s, old Kickapoo is not so happy these days for other reasons. Being overtly declared repeatedly in the press as Philadelphia's wealthiest citizen has its drawbacks. Now, one might remember that back in August 1929, E.T. Stotesbury toasted at a Bar Harbor dinner that his accountant recently informed him that he is now worth $100 million. For 2023, that would be $1.77 billion. That value didn't last long when only months later the Wall Street crash on October 29, 1929 sent many fortunes down the drain. Yes, take the implication. Stotesbury is hit very hard by that financial implosion. Now, 2.5 years later, recovery doesn't look very promising. Further agitation, the IRS is enforcing income tax payments. Stotesbury is on top of the list of tax dodgers and evaders. He absolutely hates the idea of taxes. So much so that he makes a solemn vow to himself. He will spend every last remaining dime before his death. And boy, will he fulfill that promise to the surprise of those around him. He plans to live every last minute to the fullest, despite critics. Oh, and he really can withstand scandals. His children, stepchildren, and their spouses alone have provided plenty of headlines. Affairs, divorces, a failed Florida land development scheme, and even a murder suspect. Stotesbury and his wife also fear the growing public uproar and attention over the elite. Thus, they make a decision to pack up and leave. At least until things calm down. They will head to England and Europe for this 1932 summer and will likely spend more time at their Palm Beach and Bar Harbor homes. The Stotesburys fear the growing discontent of the Great Depression might lead to a Versailles-like pillaging of Whitemarsh Hall. Meanwhile, in 5 galleries in the North Wing, the Pennsylvania Museum of Art will display to the public the Stotesbury collection on loan. One noted to rank comparably to the Huntington collection in California. The large display of art includes several English portraits, Beauvais tapestries, French and English furniture, Chinese porcelain, several remarkable Isfahan Persian carpets, and a rich series of English color prints. Speaking of Versailles, one remnant, an exquisite large blue diamond from India known as the French blue, went missing during the French Revolution looting in September 1792, only to resurface in 1812 London once the 20-year amnesty had been declared. The now Hope Diamond then passes several more hands until landing in the Washington Post headquarters and around the neck of Evalyn Walsh McLean. She has been quoted as previously stating she wanted to die penniless. Only the comment is more flippant than when the time comes sooner than a deathbed ending. Recently losing her mother and in the middle of a tumultuous and humiliating divorce, Evalyn attempts to distract herself by rescuing the Lindbergh baby. Unfortunately, she is fleeced out of $100,000. That's $2.18 million in 2023 by former FBI agent Gaston Means. The money disappeared, and now a short-term mortgage used to raise those funds is due. Evalyn discreetly meets with a pawnbroker and does what she will do multiple times and pawns the Hope Diamond to raise the cash. She will later repurchase it back, the public at large none the wiser of her dire financial straits. The Great Depression heightens attention on the wealthy. Thus, many of the ultra-rich downscale due to pressure to appear less enviably opulent. Still, there are others who will use this faux modesty to hide what no longer exists. The penultimate masters of such illusions will be E.T. Stotesbury and his wife, Eva Stotesbury. They will play cat and mouse as they will close and reopen Whitemarsh Hall several times over the next few years, their outside wealth a perfect mask and foible. June 13th, 1932. Newspapers announced the generous lending of the Stotesbury exhibit along with the indefinite closing of Whitemarsh Hall. As several hundred servants are let go, questions float about. Will the mansion ever be opened again? But no one suspects the truth. The seemingly endless pot of gold will be empty in a few years' time. No good fortune lasts forever. Section 2, History and Historiography. I have admitted to lying in these stories. Lies are both very simple and very complicated things. The lies might be merely one of omission, not telling fully what I know, but that is also part of keeping with the chronology by not revealing things that are not truly exposed until later to the main players within our story or the public at large, if ever. My lies are simply a story device intended to help replicate the experience with full intention to reveal as the story evolves. But the lies that are really happening within the story are far more complicated, the motives not nearly as pure, and the results far more heartbreaking and even sinister. Of course, I have known for a long time the reveals that are forthcoming, and still it is quite different to then flesh out the historical details and see the lies appear in real time back then. The news articles confirming or disproving the facts as they evolve. In 1921, the Stotesburys open Whitemarsh Hall and throw an elaborate party for Delphine Dodge, the first wife of Eva Stotesbury's son, James Jimmy H.R. Cromwell, and heiress to the Dodge automobile fortune. Upon visiting the home, Henry Ford once quipped, "It is a great experience to see how the rich live." Whitemarsh Hall was the third largest home built in America until 2021. When Paul McLean's builds for Los Angeles realtor Nile Niami the mansion referred as the One in Bel Air, California. Now, Whitemarsh Hall is officially the fourth largest home ever built in America. The two largest homes, and they still exist, are first, Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina, and second, Oheka Castle in West Hills, New York. The other Stotesbury estates rank high too. One ties for 26, El Mirasol in Palm Beach, Florida, while the most modest estate ranks at 54th, the Wingwood House in Bar Harbor, Maine. All three Stotesbury estates have since been demolished. Previously mentioned Marjorie Merriweather Post Hutton's home, Mar-a-Lago, is the 68th and is now owned by Donald Trump. Currently, a new 10th largest home to be named Versailles is being built in Windermere, Florida, for David Siegel, owner of Westgate Resorts. Curious to see these estates and others like them? Then check out Instagram accounts Mansions of the Gilded Age and Gotham's Gilded Age, which regularly post homes from the era. As well, architect and lecturer Gary Lawrence has a Facebook group and YouTube channel, Mansions of the Gilded Age, regularly featuring the estates. Links in the notes and transcript. Reading about the Stotesbury Mansion's demise and seeing the list of its art collection gives me flashbacks of my trip to Europe while in graduate school. Though I had progressed to studying Middle Eastern empires, I chose as my first and solo international trip to head to Europe due to my original historical obsessions, travel ease, and my French was far better than my Turkish. Of course, with my imperial and dynastic focus, first on my list was head to Versailles. My mom had seen it previously and introduced me to its tragic history, but it was still hard to process how stripped down this magnificent palace was and the very tiny amounts of replicas attempting to reestablish its former grandeur. The garden still beautiful, but the past pillaging still echoes throughout. A little over a week later, I ended up in Vienna, Austria, and decided to visit that city's grand palace, Schönbrunn, despite knowing little about the Habsburgs. To my delight, as the Habsburgs had abdicated after World War I, much remained intact. Original furniture and some clothing would be in the individual rooms, a whole different experience seeing the ornate desk with writing utensils as well as the famous Empress Sisi's star dress. In all the places I visited back then, I was delighted to find traces of the Orient and select art treasures, faint whispers hinting at former international relations and curiosities. Art has always been associated with wealth and power throughout history. The newly moneyed Americans with their Gilded Age fortunes try to rival and emulate Europeans and continue the tradition. While many of the wealthy have art collections, only a select few are truly noteworthy. While society queen Caroline Astor's rather poor taste in art is outmatched by others, her grandson, Jakey, John Jacob Astor VI, will be known to have far superior taste. His friend, Huntington Hartford, as well has great taste in art and collections. Both Doris Duke and Barbara Hutton will also be known for their relatively more peculiar taste. Doris will amass an impressive Islamic art collection, while Barbara has strong interest in the Far East. As listed in the newspapers, the Stotesbury collection is of worthy note. Thus, I will now give the extensive list for those connoisseurs curious to know what works were shared. Please forgive any mispronunciations. Here are the Stotesbury items on loan in 1932 to the Pennsylvania Museum of Art. 24 paintings, among them Reynolds' Miss Barwell, 9 Romneys, a youthful portrait of William Beckford and that of the Vernon children, 4 Hoppner portraits, including the full-length Tambourine Girl, 7 Lawrences, including a full-length of Mrs. Thompson, and 2 entrancing portraits of the Mrs., plural, Conyngham. English color prints from 30 of the most important painters and engravers, including a complete and the finest set known of the Cries of London. The chief tapestries are large ones of the Chinese set designed by Francois Boucher and woven by Bouvet around about 1745, a pair of 18th century style French tapestries, several 16th century Isfahan Persian carpets, 150 feet in length, a very fine savonnerie of the Louis XVI period. As for furniture, 2 large sets of tapestry upholstered chairs and sofas, One of these, with the original carved and gilded frames, is of the Regency period, and the other, fully developed Louis XV, representing the Fables of Aesop. An English set of William and Mary chairs with upholstery of fine antique needlework, a notable series of French and English tables and commodes, a magnificent inlaid Buhl library table of the Louis XIV period, several antique gilded console tables, a Louis XVI secretary by Riesener, greatest of the ebonists, and 2 inlaid Heppel-white cabinets used for the display of porcelain. Chinese porcelains include 2 extremely large pairs of temple vases, a number of very fine garnitures and single pieces, a remarkable set of birds in Dresden porcelain from a princely house in Germany, and lastly, among the statues mentioned are a group of sculptures by Clodion and another 4 French 18th century figures. Ironically, during World War II, Whitemarsh Hall would serve as a warehouse for many of the New York Metropolitan's Museum of Art treasures. This precautionary measure is taken on due to the fear and prevention of any potential destruction if a German invasion by U-boats or warships occurred on Manhattan. We don't have to go very far back in history to see looting of former grand palaces. After the Second Gulf War, the fall and capture of Saddam Hussein in 2003 saw the looting of his palaces in Iraq. And more recently, as of July 2022, the presidential palace in Sri Lanka, where many are seen swimming in the pool via social media. And alas, the continual looting and thefts of high-end retail stores throughout the pandemic, especially during the riots. Eerie reminders to never underestimate the potential of an uprising and looting as times get tough. And any far too apparent contrasting wealth, inevitably, might become targets. Section 3, Contemporary and Personal Relevance. Let me say this up front, without a doubt. If you learn one thing from the whole of all these stories, you can always outspend a fortune. It doesn't matter the size. It can be gone in an instant. As fast, if not faster, than it is made. How? Quite easy. Far, far too easy. All those snarky comments people make when criticizing the rich and that they would teach the unhappy ones how to enjoy those fortunes? Well, yeah, that's the point. Someone can always spend, and definitely there are plenty of those willing to take. It is far harder and more complex to build and even more to keep a fortune. Hence, large dynastic fortunes and even empires in days of old rarely last more than 3 generations later. 5 is phenomenal. And those centuries-long Rothschilds? Well, a freaking anomaly of the highest order. Once again, I am covering a story I have known almost since the beginning of my research, now almost a decade ago. I warned you, I have been telling lies and will continue for a bit longer. Why? It's simple, really, as letting you experience the way many in the story experience the betrayals. It really does an injustice to merely say someone is lying, thereby implying others are being fools. A lie is a betrayal, and when it is someone truly close or any form of necessary dependency, that betrayal is then far more significant. Let me explain something. I'm a person who grew up around people making a lot of money and losing it almost as fast, if not faster, than they made it. I was surrounded by those realtors and bankers in the savings and loan scandal. I watched one of my dad's coked-out realtor employees get bitched out for his nonsense by the company accountant, my mother. I worked at one company where an owner was being naively embezzled by his greedy and envious brother-in-law. I endured countless years unknowingly my ex-husband's meth ramblings and endless lies. And over the years, also learning about other personal tales of family, friends, and other close acquaintances. So all that is to say, I'm a little bit well-versed in how people deceive others and themselves, how people get wrapped up in facades, those they present to others, as well as what outsiders misperceive they are seeing from the outside. I will admit that many people believe the lies they tell, or at least have a diluted magical thinking that eventually the lies will become true. Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, near catastrophic car chase? The pain is that the hopeful promises within the lies almost never do come true. And worse, more damage accumulates that could have been prevented had honesty reigned. Now here's the fun part. History has its cycles. Human nature is human nature. So when we hear all these past stories, it is quite natural to look for modern parallels. Of course, it's speculation for the moment. But are you picking up the signs and signals that something could become amiss in our own times? Today is speculation, prophecies yet to be proven, hindsight more accurate than forecasting. So don't be fooled by appearances. Mirages are meant to deceive those seeking water or gold, and those desperate will always be after the gold at any cost. Rich, past, present, or future, beware. Recently, I was interviewed for the Talking Billions podcast with Bogomil Baranowski. The episode will be featured this May 2023. I will post the links in the notes and transcript page. Curious about how to raise your own fortune and other advice about wealth? Check out Bogomil's podcast, Talking Billions. Here's the trailer.
Welcome to Talking Billions. We talk about big ideas, big inspirations, big topics. We take on the hardest subject of all, money. How to make it, save it, keep it. But our conversations lead us to an even bigger question: what it means to live a rich life beyond money. My guests share their practices, principles, and evergreen wisdom. I'm your host, Bogomil Baranowski, author, TEDx speaker, investor, and a founding partner of Sicard Associates, a boutique investment firm founded in New York City. Join me on this quest to unearth the wisdom of the ages.
If you enjoy As the Money Burns, then please share, like, and subscribe. Next, when we return to As the Money Burns. While reporting on the upcoming presidential election, an undercover heir faces an angry mob of those hit hard by the Great Depression. Until then, As the Money Burns is an original podcast written, produced, and voiced by Nikki Woodard based on historical research. Archival music has been provided by Past Perfect Vintage Music. Check out their website at www.pastperfect.com. Please come visit us at As the Money Burns via Goodpods, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Transcripts, timeline, episode guide, and character bios are available at asthemoneyburns.com.